gentlemen, dear students, faculty of University of Warsaw, and dear guests. Today marks a special occasion as we have honor of hosting one of the most prominent figures in European politics, Roberta Metsola, the President of the European Parliament. It's truly a pleasure to have you here, and we also welcome the entire delegation, but a special welcome to our Secretary General of the European Parliament, Alessandro Ciocchetti. Oh, I'm sorry about that, but I tried my best. We also have our MP, Andrzej Halicki. We welcome you as well. Madame President has an incredibly impressive background that symbolizes all the values, determination, and commitment of what we think of ourselves as Europeans. Even as a student, in her work, I think before the accession votes for Malta, you showed very impressive engagement in European affairs. So, President's path to the European Parliament has been filled with many successes, also some challenges, but I hope it's going to be a big inspiration to all of you here, specifically students that might follow up in the same path, politics or any other endeavors. I will just mention two, maybe three things that you might already know, but it's important to mention this because President is the first Maltese national, third woman, and the youngest ever to hold the function of President of the European Parliament. And this itself speaks volumes of her exceptional leadership skills. I think I would mention just one more thing, that we remember her speech when you mentioned that we are the Erasmus generation, the last of Wałęsa and Havel, and I think it also shows how deeply understanding knowledge you have when it comes to our values and identity of Europe. So today we have a unique opportunity to ask as many questions as we like. The President has graciously allowed us a lot of time to dive into a lot of different things, so I welcome you all to have so many questions as you wish. I will moderate it, but at this moment, before we get to this area, I would like to invite the host of today's assembly, Rector of University of Warsaw, Professor Alojzy Nowak, with opening remarks, if you may.
Madam President, we are more than happy to have you here with us. We have been frankly awaiting you for quite a long time, and there are many reasons. But reason number one, we know that you have always supported Poland to be a member of the European Union. You have always supported Poland to achieve different things within the European Union. And as far as I know, you were always a very good friend of us, being in Poland, being in many other places, and this is the proper momentum to say thank you very much for everything you have been doing for us. We know also that in this complicated situation in the world, and in particular not far away from here, you have been also supporting our Ukrainian friends, and you were indicating on this situation, on what is going on, and you were talking many times about humanities, human beings, etc., etc. We have, as you probably know, both students from both countries, Russian students and Ukrainian students. We support Ukrainian students very much here, being at Warsaw University. We have arranged probably the biggest package, not only financial, but giving the possibility of studying and living with us for Ukrainian students, and Senate of the University of Warsaw approved approximately 2,500 seats or places for Ukrainian students. More or less 20-25% came, and we also deliver. We provide also possibilities for the other students. So in this sense, University of Warsaw has been doing pretty the same, maybe not exact, but pretty the same work you have been doing as a nominant president of the Parliament of the European Union. And we thank you for that. And I wanted to underline that we are following you. So thank you for coming. As you see, there are many students who are just now in the break. We have break at the University of Warsaw between the two semesters and after the exam sessions. And believe me or not, but if they got some knowledge that you will be here, you immediately decided to come, to welcome to you, to talk to you, and to just discuss and to appreciate everything what you have been doing. Thank you very much. And only one more sentence is that I wanted to say you that the University of Warsaw and many of my colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, from very beginning, were admiring you, were supporting you, and they were always in favor of being within European Union. And we are proud that we are among the European universities. We are proud that we are part of European Union, and this is also your and yours achievement. So thank you. Welcome, and stay with us, and always remember that the doors of the University of Warsaw are open, and one day if you decide to come to teach at Warsaw University, will be more than welcome. Thank you very much. The floor is yours. Or
Thank you very much, Mr. Rector, not least because you have decided what my next job will be, so thank you. Very nice to be with you here, and thank you for coming to spend a little bit of time with me and the colleagues, even during your break. You know, I am the mother of 4 boys, and I'm thinking what I would have done if I was a student and I was on holiday, or what my children would do, so thank you for, let's say, going against what would otherwise be the stereotype of what students do. Why am I here in Poland today? I am, as President of the European Parliament, currently going from one member state to another with one main aim. That is for as many of you, as many Polish citizens, people living here, to vote in the June European elections. So I'll start with one question. Did you vote in the last European elections? Were you yet 18? For those of you who were 18, did you vote? Okay. How many of you intend to vote in June? How many of you have not decided yet? Okay. Good audience for this. Good start. I would like you to leave this room with one thought and one appeal from me, is that I need you to convince as many of your friends to do the same. We tend to forget in Europe that this very hard-fought right was mentioned, of countries like yours and mine joined on the same day in the European Union, is today taken for granted. We tend to ignore the fact that there are many more people in the world who cannot choose their leaders than there are who can. And because we find ourselves in this situation, for different reasons, you might say, oh, all politics is the same, politics is boring, look at them arguing, they're not really different one to each other. That's not the case. Politics is ultimately a force for good. It is the reason why I, as a student, decided to enter politics, because I believed in something. I thought at the time not enough young people entered politics. So I would also like you to think a little bit about making the next step, not only to vote, but also to be candidates. Could be for anything. Not least, of course, the European Parliament is the best place to be. But also because I wanted to stand for something. There are too many people in the world who don't stand for anything. But you have the world and the information of all the world at your fingertips. And it's that kind of information that I would like you to sift through and make up your own mind. And really take the decision as to who will be the 53 members of the European Parliament in June that come from Poland. Next 5 years will not be easy. As was also mentioned, the last 5 years were not easy. We had a pandemic where the European Union literally shut down, the world shut down. One of my biggest fears during the pandemic was that we would not be able to reopen as well as we were before. But we defied the odds. We have a war, almost 2 years now. But we have been united more than ever before. We have a reflection to do. The past 20 years, have they been good for Poland? I have no doubt that they have. Look at your life, look at everything around you. But that reflection will also be, where do we go from here? Is everything perfect? Of course not. Can things be improved? Absolutely. But we improve them along the principle of values, of hope, and of belief in your country. And that you can always be better, and always do better. Because the decisions that will be taken in the European Parliament in the next 5 years will not only determine where Europe goes, but also where Poland goes. Every discussion we have, whether it is on security, on defense, on the environment, on climate, on agriculture, on migration, on digital, artificial intelligence, you name it, women's rights, disability, it starts in the European Parliament. And you might not like the result of that debate if you would not have had the power of choosing your representative and being able to, this is your right, and what you should do, because it's not only a right but a responsibility, is that what then that same representative comes in front of you a few years later, as the then elected politician representing you, you have the ability to say, I like what you did here, I don't like what you did here, I would like you to change, otherwise I will change my member. If you don't vote, you can't do that. That's the best thing about democracy. So this will be the largest democratic exercise that is in the world, actually, multinational-wise, in June, between 6th and 9th, 2024. There will be many elections this year, some unpredictable, some others predictable. But let's use our right to make that difference and for you to feel represented. Now, I'm from the South, I talk a lot, so that's why I have no speech, and I said that the format of this kind of debate, I was in Estonia on Monday, in Tallinn, I was in Prague yesterday, I will go to Gdansk tomorrow, is that you can ask me anything. So no question is out of bounds or could not be asked, you know, full openness. That's how I was taught in university. Sometimes they liked my questions, sometimes they didn't, but I wanted the politicians who stood before me to at least listen and answer them. So I have to do the same now. Go ahead.
Okay.
And thank you so much for being brave and coming without knowing anything. And how many questions like would you be asked from the students? And all my questions will be related to the war in Ukraine. So how long is the European Parliament ready to support Ukraine? And will the European Parliament demand to ask the financial aid that has given already to Ukraine to return?
My question is about last week events in all across Europe, as well in Poland. We have agronomic protests, and my question is, shouldn't we as the European Union think once again about European Green Deal? Is it good to do this as fast as the European Union planned this? And what do you think about the protests in Poland, here in Poland, about imports from Ukraine? Shouldn't we put embargo on more products coming from Ukraine? Thank you very much.
My question specifically is about the future election in the United States. What if Donald Trump will win? He clearly says that he's really against to help Ukraine. And how do you see the role of European Union? Are you able to help as much as America does now? And to help to give the opportunity for Ukraine to be able to win this war?
First question, how long will we support Ukraine? Well, the minute the invasion took place on the 24th of February, first of all, we woke up to a realization that we had been warned that this would happen, but we were not prepared. We were disproportionately reliant on Russia for gas. And that did not only mean that we had a war on our continent, but also that we had to decouple from a neighboring country that was clearly not reliable. So our statement was clear. We would help Ukraine, stand with Ukraine, because Ukrainians were fighting for our freedoms, the ones we really fought for too, same values that we have. And therefore, that would mean that we will stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. 2 years later, that statement is still very strong, partly because we have been so far the largest financial contributor to Ukraine. We have been the largest host of refugees. Poland in particular, still 2 million Ukrainians living here, welcomed with open hearts and into your homes. Thank you very much for that on behalf of all of Europe. And 3, it's because we needed to send a message that when a country on our territory is attacked because it had already happened in 2008 and again in 2014, that this was not a case of nothing spilling over the borders. So we are in a situation today where financially we have already given 88 billion euros. We are discussing, because you mentioned how will you return that. It's not a question of return, it's a question of our whole survival as a continent, but also about what can be made for the reconstruction of Ukraine, which will have to start. And you know, it was interesting, this morning I went to the Warsaw Uprising Museum with a member of the European Parliament, Andrzej Halicki, here, and the discussion was not only about the fact that Warsaw was completely destroyed, but also what was needed to reconstruct. And we are currently discussing, and national parliaments are doing it, so for example the Baltic countries are doing it, to adopt legislation even at a European level on how to use frozen assets for that reconstruction. Because we believe, and this is something that has been done before, that's why we talk about international tribunals, accountability for crimes committed, that the aggressor needs to be held accountable and responsible. And the final thing I will say is, and this will link also to the third question that Mariam asked, is that, you know, we are asked a lot about what will happen. When will the war end? What does peace mean? And our answer is very clear, that a peace has to be that nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Because there are actually actors around this world that would like to decide what peace means without Ukraine being consulted. For us, peace means peace with dignity, peace with justice, peace with accountability, peace with territorial sovereignty. And that is why we went to the next step of granting, we were the first institution to do it, ask for Ukraine to become a candidate status together with Moldova, and then to open negotiations. And this will also mean that we need to carry this commitment over to the next election, to the next parliament, because if in November what Mariam said will happen, and I don't want to speculate, that's a democratic process across the pond. But first of all, we need to continue to believe in that transatlantic relationship. But yes, a realization that when we talk about strategic autonomy, we really mean being autonomous. And that means that we might find ourselves in a situation where we are alone as a union. And that's where our defense expenditure has to be questioned, current and future. Secondly, our ability to protect each other. Thirdly, our ability to continue to remain competitive. And fourthly, and perhaps overarching on all this, how to keep our citizens safe. Also not only to feel safe, but to live safely, work and grow economically safely. And this leads me to the second question on the agriculture protest. So this has perhaps recent news for you. I mean, it's not the first time that this has happened, as you can imagine. Erasmus was mentioned earlier. I was an Erasmus student 20 years ago, a little bit more than 20 years ago in France. And I very much remember agricultural protests then, huge ones. And that was because in the context of the reform of the then agricultural policy, and this is a cycle. But what I would tell you is this, and this is why I said we need a reflection, and this country could lead that reflection process, is that the Czech president likes to say this. You know, 20 years ago, countries like this one, Czech Republic, my own, the 10 who joined, were the new kids on the block. You're no longer the new kids on the block. Now you are the ones leading the decisions and making them and influencing them. And that this reflection process has to be that we ask ourselves, are we going too far, too fast? Can our climate goals, which are necessary, and ambitions which are necessary, and targets that need to be reached with the citizens with us? That we have created enough of the so-called cushion for the social and economic impact on our people, whether they are, we're talking about poor people, poverty, middle class, business owners, small business owners, large employers, the agricultural sector. You know, when the pandemic started, we asked the farmers to help us. We said, now we have closed our borders, we depend on our own local produced supply, which is the best, highest quality, only one we have now. I don't think we would be honest with ourselves if now, 4 years later, we are saying, you know what, implement all that legislation, even though we don't think you might survive. And therefore, we need to ask those questions. That's why in the Parliament, there was a very clear vote on the pesticides regulation, and the Commission has had to withdraw the regulation. And that there is an overwhelming need to reiterate that the green transition, which we call the green transition, in other words, what we need to do, especially with the financial incentives that we've put into our economy in order for us to recover post-COVID, green transition cannot take place without the agricultural sector at its core. And I strongly believe that we can continue in our path towards being the most climate ambitious continent on this planet without leaving anybody behind. And that means more discussion, more listening. I take protests as a sign of a healthy democratic society and conversation. But we who are in a position of responsibility and taking decisions and making laws need to make sure that the messages that we receive from those protests are taken into our policy making. Because otherwise, if we lose our citizens, we will look around us and not see them anymore. And most worryingly, that those citizens will find, and we are seeing this in many countries, that they have nowhere else to go except to the comfort of the political extremes. I come from the very center of the political spectrum, and it is that center that can build a constructive pro-European path on which we can continue to go over the next years.
My name is Maya. I am a first-year student of European Studies, and my question is, what advice would you give to young women who want to succeed in politics, especially in European politics, and how to encourage them to put themselves out in the world? Thank you very much.
So the question is, what about the news about the nuclear weapon that Russia is wanting to send to the cosmos? And what do you think that it is a real danger, or it's just some information that is to make the situation more stressful in the European Union? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. My name is Dr. Rana. I am from Faculty of Economic Sciences. So as a researcher, I want to ask about the research fund allocation for Poland, or especially for the Baltic countries. In the ERC, European Research Council, we don't have much funds allocation for the research in Baltic countries, and especially for Eastern European country or Central European country. So don't you think is a nice idea, just like we have 53 parliament seats in European Parliament from Poland, we can allocate some kind of funds from ERC for these countries, because all the funds they always get from Germany, France, or Great Britain, they always get the main funds or main projects. We also need to have artificial intelligence impact on our socio-economic impact in these countries, so we need much more funds to get this kind of research done. Thank you so much.
So I'll start maybe back to front. On the research funds, I mean, this is something very close to home. Two of my sisters work in academia. One politician per family is enough, and everybody's very happy with that. And they are both scientists, and they tell me the same. They also feel the impact since the United Kingdom left the European Union, not only in terms of funds allocated, but in terms of partnerships reached between universities. I will have a look at the specific ERC allocation. And perhaps, you know, there is a specific portfolio within the European Commission that is dedicated to research. We have committees with Polish members there, so I can think of President Buzek, who is in the Industry, Technology and Research Committee, that we could also, as we prepare the government program for the next 5 years, have a look as to whether there is an imbalance between regions. Because I agree with what you said, that sometimes you see, you know, those universities that have for decades been at the forefront of applying for funding, and therefore being given the funding, but they also need partners. And the partners cannot be from the same region of the European Union. So we need to become a little bit more creative also, because if we think about the knowledge potential that we have in the European Union, the number of patents that we own, but with a gap of how much of those patents are used and implemented in our economies. And that is key to our competitiveness. It is key to making sure that we keep our talent here. And it is also key to making sure that we remain at the forefront of research, which is what the European Union has had at its very top of its priorities. And we should not let that go, no matter how much we are in a sort of crisis mode as a European Union. And that was one of my worries when a couple of weeks ago there was a risk that the 50 billion euros would not go to Ukraine because they were being held up. But there were a couple of other programs on the side, and one of them was called STEP, which is about science and technology, smaller, important, that would have easily been lost. And we fought for that. Parliament was extremely vocal. And I think that we can really start the next mandate also about recognizing where things were not okay in terms of balance. And I will also pass it on to my Polish and Baltic colleagues. Thank you for that. On the Russian threat, I mean, this is a serious threat. Thanks for asking it. One that cannot be ignored. One that should really be taken seriously because of its impact. You know, it could destroy civilian communications, as we read, surveillance from space and military command and control operations, you know, that are used by the US and its allies, including us. So we don't have a weapon to defeat to be able to counter such an attack. And that's why we call for what we know as the defense union, that we need to be able to be prepared. Are we prepared? I don't think so. You know, this is a very domestic discussion for me. My husband is from Finland, and there's a lot of debates there in a country that has 1,400-kilometer border with Russia as to what would happen. And I can tell you that this is taken extremely seriously there. Advice, you know, I would say it's never easy, Maya, but the fact that you're asking that question is already a bigger step. Where are you? I have to see you. There you are. Is already a bigger step than many women of your age would do. This morning on a program, what was it called? I was on a program, Dzień dobry. Dzień dobry. I was on Dzień Dobry program, and did you watch it?
No, it's a good morning, basically.
I know. But it's written differently. So, and did you watch it? It was, you're on holiday, yeah, I can't expect you to wake up so early. But, you know, I was asked about being a woman in politics, balancing family and career, but also about hate speech, about, you know, how politics has changed if I compare to the first time I ran. You know, I used to be very active in student organizations, also with my Polish counterparts who would run around all this country, from university to university, explaining to everybody what the benefits of Polish membership was in the European Union. And we would get all sorts of questions, you know, whether it is, are we going to lose our independence? Are we going to lose our sovereignty? Are we going to be swallowed up by the bigger countries? And look at how, you know, on the right side of history we were, and having been proved right in terms of the leadership that Poland has right now, also at the center of the European Union. But today, 5 elections later, so I've run 5 times for the European Parliament. I didn't get elected the first time. I didn't get elected the second time. And as my father said on the 3rd time, finally she made it, is that there will be many things that will try to hold you back. Oh, don't do it, it's too early. Your time will come later. I used to hate it when people told me that. You know, I would have politicians who are much older telling us all at university, oh, you know, you are the future. I would be like, I'm here, standing here, you know, and I have my own thoughts, I have my own ideas. Don't tell me what to think in 10 years. I want to be able to say them now. And the final thing is that if you believe in something, do not give up on it. There will be many people who tell you, don't do it. You will lose. I've been given that a lot. You will not manage. You come from a tiny country. You will not be asked, told that. I was told this. You come from a tiny country, you know, you cannot get to where you think you can make it to, etc. And my answer was always, it's okay, but let me run. And if I lose on my own terms, not because somebody else told me to give up. And that's the advice I would give to everybody, all of you. If you believe in something, never give up on it, ever.
My name is Olivia, I'm a law student, and first of all I would like to thank you for your visit and an inspiration, because with reference to your previous answer, I feel very personally attached to what you've said, because I took part in parliamentary elections as the youngest candidate on a list,
Bravo.
as many of my young friends who decided to take matters into their own hands. So thank you for motivating us young people to take part into politics. And my question refers to the defense strategy, because there are many voices also about creating a EU army. And would you say that this is a good idea? And what's Madam President's take on that aspect? Thank you very much.
My question is, what does for a future hold European Union and Poland in 10 years? Thank you very much.
My name is Eliza. I study foreign languages, English and French, here in Warsaw, and I wanted to ask you whether is there any correlation between taking part in an internship in European structures and getting there a job in the future? Is it even possible? How to be the best candidate to suit there? Thank you.
Thank you. So we have 3 questions. Just hold on.
All right. So, how much time do we have left? So I can calculate my answers.
We have 20 minutes left.
Okay, so I'll be fast. Now, Olivia, look, on this EU army, it's not a new thing, right? People have been mentioning it for years. I remember when we were discussing the precursor of the current treaties, which were the Constitution for the Future of Europe. We also toyed with the idea, and that was rejected. And I would say that today there is no, let's say, enthusiasm for that term to be used, but rather to take this a step by step. One, we are currently working on ramping up our rapid deployment capacity. In other words, we need to be operational starting with 5,000 troops by 2025, but of course we all understand that this has to be larger, with creating a proper security and defense union that is complementary to NATO, that does not compete with NATO. This is important. Also, to keep in mind that there are some of the EU member states, including my own, that are constitutional and militarily neutral. So this is something that I need to say. And that has to be taken into consideration. But all member states need to give a real commitment to making sure that we are ready when or if things get worse. You know, if you see at the moment the collection of capacity in the Red Sea, I will give you a sort of a bit of a comparison. You know, the information trickles down in terms of coordination. It's difficult to see, you know, the mission and its outcome, but that gives you an idea of how prepared we need to be. And that also means that those countries that have spent below their necessary targets in NATO need to ramp it up. That is a sine qua non, that we have a union that is flexible. One thing we learned when the war started in Ukraine, that we were not flexible enough with our budgetary structures to move from one part of the budget to another to help. Whether from a tangible point of view, from an army licensing point of view, product movement from one country to another, type of product, training protocols, etc. So really that we can defend ourselves and be a proper security provider for our citizens. Now, Mateusz, I love Rzeszów, by the way. It is a place where I returned to when I first went to Kiev in April. I went into Kiev from Przemyśl, and I returned from Rzeszów, and I was pretty impressed by what that city really did in terms of being the hub, you know, of biggest reception of Ukrainian refugees, or biggest movement of people at once. In a short time, your town is just amazing. So I think if we look at the future, I would also ask you this question, you know, where would you like to see your country in 5 years? But if you ask me, I would like to continue to see Poland leading. You know, I would like to look at the European Union and its map and see Poland at its very center of every decision that is taken. That's important, not only for you, but for all of us and for the region, to see that strength being shown. It's something that I have always believed in, and it's something that I think is very much needed. In terms of a union, I would like, you know, we talk a lot about hope, we talk a lot about values, we talk about the rule of law, democracy. I would like to make sure that those fundamental things are not ignored. That when we go from crisis to crisis, I give you an example. In my country, a journalist was assassinated, in Slovakia the same. And that made us realize that our democracies are not safe if politicians can try to silence journalists, if our systems do not protect those who are investigating, those who are asking even the nastiest of questions. So I would like a European Union that is based on security and peace and prosperity for everyone in safety. Internship and job. Well, the Secretary General is here, so you can ask him. But if you
can give him the CV, or
I have, you know, we have very different possibilities to enter the institutions. Some that focus a lot on language skills, so it's good that you are studying the languages that you mention. Also, for you to have to be prepared, there is an exam. There are also country-specific lines that you can take, directions, paths, not lines, paths. There is the possibility for you to become a Schumann trainee, which is a flagship program of the European Parliament. Two of my assistants today were, more I think, yeah, three of my assistants were formerly Schumann trainees. So you get a traineeship for quite a long time, and then you learn a lot. It's a very, very good internship. What I can tell you also is that our internships are paid in the European Parliament. We're extremely proud of that. And that was very, very hard fought by students like yourself who wanted to be given the quality of access that not only those who could afford it. And then finally, you know, you will have 53 members of the European Parliament elected from Poland in June. What I would advise you to do is write to them on day 0 of the election and tell them, I would like to come work in your office. And you'll be surprised. That's how I also recruited most of my assistants, by receiving an email and a good CV, and I say, I'll try this person out. And then, if you want to do an internship with me, come and do it with me. Or the Secretary General, I'm sure he's going to nod as well. Okay.
While preparing for this meeting, I read that you were involved in the politics from an early age. As an example, during your studies at the university, you were a member of a student association. And my question is, was this experience important for your future career? And what do you recommend for us, students, if you want to be at your place in the future? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice.
So my question is from the field of political psychology. As you know, personality traits are used to describe individuals, but there's a theory that we can also use them to describe collectives, such as groups and political parties. So my question to you is, from your experience as a politician, as an MEP, as the president of the European Parliament, from your perspective, do political parties exhibit these collective personality traits? And if so, what kind?
And my question is about the upcoming elections, because we know that there is a significant rise in endorsement for populist, right-wing and conservative parties, also possibly in the European Parliament. And we know that these parties are far more skeptical about the way that the goals of European Union, such as the European Green Deal, are introduced. So my question is, do you think that a compromise can be settled between the left-wing and the center and the right-wing parties and the factions in the European Parliament? And do you think that there is a possibility to modify the European Green Deal, for instance, that it would suit everybody, basically? Thank you.
Christoph, I don't want to speculate about the outcome of the election. So I look at polls. I'll just think of myself now as a candidate, right? So I am a candidate of my political party back home, which is a Christian Democrat Party. And I found myself in each and every one of these elections looking to my left, looking to my right, and wondering what do I have in common with those candidates. But how, most importantly, was I going to convince those who are sitting in front of me that if one to my right was saying black and one to my left was saying white, that my rational, pragmatic, shades of grey answer, which is what happens in the European Parliament and everywhere really, is going to get through that very easy discussion. For example, in my country, migration is a big topic. So on my right, I would have a candidate who says, we will accept no migrants in our country. On my left, I would have a candidate who would say that all our borders should be completely open. But my answer would be like, let's protect life, let's distribute responsibility between member states, let's give protection to who is eligible, no protection to who is eligible, and be super harsh on traffickers who prey on the most vulnerable people on the planet. Now, that took me a long time to answer, but the worst thing we could do and really see a populist rise is if we don't give that answer. Rather think that our voters will vote for us anyway, don't worry. Or it's not true that they will find comfort in the extremes. That's not the case. We have seen it in certain countries, Netherlands being one, the most recent. And it's a mix of both. It's a mix of frustration with being taken for granted. It's a frustration with the fact that there was a very successful campaign that says everything is bad is coming from Brussels. And three, focusing on your last point, is that there was this image of inflexibility. You know, inflexibility with saying, okay, 4 years ago we decided that this was going to be our trajectory and no way are we going to change it. I think if we've learned something over the last 4.5 years is that that's absolutely not possible anymore. And that's why when we look at future legislation, when we look at the implementation, when we understand that there are some things that will be reviewed, some legislation will be looked at in 2 years, in 1 year. The European Disability Card was adopted last week. You know, we have 3 years to enforce it. We will look at the situation then. Is that I think the next 5 years will be very much focused on that implementation. And I can tell you that that implementation and this middle of the road grey answer that I gave you is the one that will seek to build rather than to destroy. It is always easier to run a campaign based on fear or the unknown or misplaced nostalgia. It's much harder to say, look, we've done this well, we've done this badly, we can improve, but at least we're honest. Well, I am convinced that we can do that. We were already worried in 2019 with this, and it turned out to have actually a bigger instinct for the coalition of the willing, if you want to say that, in the sense that those who really wanted to go further on different issues, whether it was on security, on Ukraine, on climate legislation, on digital legislation, on social issues, we found the solution. And we will find ourselves in June, potentially, yes, with an understanding of who can we be allies with or not. And I find myself in the camp that wants to build, that doesn't want to destroy, and that really is hopeful about future and not fearful. Adam, no, I'll leave yours for the end. So, politics at an early age. Yeah, I joined politics, I entered when I was about 16. I think everybody in my family was like, what is she doing? She's not studying at all. In fact, I didn't study much in university. When I went on Erasmus to France, I studied French, but I didn't study law as I was supposed to. I was just running around and having a lot of fun with my colleagues who are with student friends, who are, many of them, still friends of mine today. But one thing was clear to me, that although it was easier, and it took me a long time to convince my friends, right? Because a lot of them were like, what is she doing? You know, they would be going out partying and I'm hanging posters somewhere. You know, there's a specific, that personality trait, Adam, I don't know what you would call it, that verge of being a little bit mad, is that you can really, you know, spend your night placing banners most of the time contravening local legislation, hoping that the police doesn't catch you. I shouldn't be saying this, right? No, okay. My guys are like, no, just but doing things in order to send a message and having fun doing it. And I spent most of my student life until I graduated as a lawyer, specialized in elections, actually, and I will go to the next answer. Fighting for my country to join the EU, and I found that I was not alone, that there were people from Poland, from Czech Republic, from Slovakia at the time, Hungary, Baltic countries, Slovenia, Cyprus, who wanted to do the same. And do you know what? I mean, not only did I meet my husband there, but also that today, some of those people who I was running around in vans that hardly could move, you know, we would do 50 kilometers or going on trains and trying to explain to them that Malta is a real country with this passport that no one had ever seen before, are prime ministers. And we look at each other and we laugh, like, look at where we are. 20 years ago, what we were doing, and today we are the ones actually doing what we hoped and dreamed that generation would be promised. And it was not easy. Of course, it would have been much easier to just focus on my studies, but I didn't want to do that. And my hope is that you would get that spark, you know, that you will say, I want to do it, no matter how difficult it is. And then I will also say this, it is harder for women. If I had to be asked to enter politics today with my 4 children, it would be harder for me. And it is generally tougher. So start early would be my advice. Don't wait until it's the right time. It's never the right time to enter politics, but you know, you could find yourself in a situation where you decide on how your friend's life looks like. That's what my friends, I have a chat with all of them, remind me every day. Adam, you know, personality traits, I said already about this being, you know, on the verge of having something strange. But I think the important trait, and that's what political parties need, is to continue to believe that politics is a force for good. Is this naive? I don't think so. because the temptation would be for you to place disgraced ex-politicians on your list, to send them to Brussels, for example, or to move them around hoping that they will no longer be a nuisance to you, but you know they're going to be a nuisance somewhere else, and or danger even, or that it's harder to find women candidates, and therefore you push it forward to the next election, you know, like, we'll manage next time. So I would say, first of all, you require effort and persistence into making sure that at least when you take your decisions, you do it for the good of your country first, party politics later, and individual third. Sometimes they are mixed up, but you cannot forget whether you are in government, in opposition, in a position of power or not. And what I would also say is that, you know, you learn from your mistakes collectively, even from each other. You know, I look at colleagues who I've grown up on opposite sides of the political spectrum, but we share experiences because at the end of the day we have gone through the same. So, you know, it was difficult when I ran campaigns. I had a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old, you know, and the last campaign I had a baby, you know. It was very difficult. But I remember looking at somebody who comes from a different political party to me and say, only she can understand what I'm going through, because she's in exactly the same position. And we used to look at each other and smile, like. And that, I think, is something that you can do once you're in it, and it's really beyond psychology, it's also acquired. It's not ingrained. Nobody's born a leader. You become one. You have to work hard at it. And then hope that when you call yourself a leader, there are people following you, because otherwise you are not.
Okay, thank you. If I just add one thing, this is probably not the first time you're hearing this right now, but for all of you that are actually thinking about joining politics, I think Madam President has mentioned one thing that you should probably keep in mind is inflexibility. So I think you should avoid that and listen to experienced leader when you choose this path. We actually, a quick announcement, we're pretty much done with Q&A because it's 3:15. However, Madam President is not done with you because she will be joining you later on to have a little one-on-one and perhaps some pictures together. So get ready for that. But before that, I would like to ask Rector of the university, Professor Alojzy Nowak, to come to the stage because we have a little ceremony that we'd like to do with Madam President.
I didn't know about this one, okay.
Number one, thank you very much. It was just great to have you, to listen to you. Thank you for the questions. They were very, I think, important and interesting questions, and the answers are full. So it was just a pleasure to have you here, and it was worth to wait for you here. On behalf of the Senate of Warsaw University and on behalf of the community of Warsaw University, I wanted to grant you a medal of the University of Warsaw, which is our most honorable appreciation for everything you have been doing, not only for us, but for Europe or for the world's community. Thanking you and asking you, please come again to us.